happens to a society when its functioning parts lose all credibility. And that's maybe the fourth turning.
And that's the
That's really where
crisis.
we are.
That's the crisis. Hey, everybody, welcome back to Markets and Madness, as we say, the place where we discuss the madness that occurs when economics, politics, and personalities all move in different directions. Tim and I again today. Um, Looks like a down day in the markets today, election day. Is this some post-election or pre-election jitters that are hitting the markets? What do you think?
What's the name of the guy who did The Big Short?
Oh yeah.
He he went and bought a million puts on either Palantir or one of the other was Nvidia,
Okay.
and I think that spooked a lot of people.
Yeah.
Um,
So Palantir was down about 10% last time I looked.
yeah, I saw his position. They don't know what options he bought. He could have bought out of money, but he bought a million of them.
Yeah.
And I think it was Nvidia. It might have been Palantir as well.
Michael Lewis, right? Was that his
No, it
name?
wasn't Michael Lewis. That's the author. Uh,
Okay. That's right. That's right. He wrote the book. Yeah.
yeah. But anyway, I'm sure that spooked some people. And it just takes enough people to point at these valuations and say, it's going to take you, if earnings don't change, it's going to take you 11,000 years to get your money back on the stock. But of course, earnings have been changing; they've been going up. It's been they've been justifying it, but it takes a miss or two. And
Right.
we had one last week with Carvana. Carvana, um, I don't know that they missed or anyway, people were disappointed, and it's what we've been saying that these prices have to have really spectacular earnings beats to keep them up. They actually have to beat their earnings. If they just meet estimates or God forbid fail, they split the stock without issuing shares.
Yeah.
These things just drop
Yeah.
like stones. So the focus now is valuations. That seems to be the big one.
One thing we've been talking about is the government shutdown is day 35 now, and we haven't had any real government economic statistics in over a month. And when the numbers come back, what I've been reading is that the fear is that it's going to be worse than we thought when this
Yeah,
economic
I mean
numbers
that's
come out.
certainly a possibility. From where I stand, I never believe the numbers anyway. So
Yeah,
it's
but
the
there
old
there are people that do trade off them,
yeah. Well, you can't
and when
ignore them,
yeah,
but I
yeah,
pretty
when
much
they do
try.
trade off, if they come in a slew of bad number after bad number after bad number, we can. I
Yeah,
read
and it's
something.
earnings season. So if
I read.
somebody just comes in mild with a mild disappointment, it's to they take the cover off the ball. They really
Yeah,
hit it.
I read something the other day about housing, and it's a stat that went back to August, and it said there are more cancellations in the month of August 2025 than there has been since 2017. And I talked to a friend who's pretty involved in the real estate market. And I said, "What do you attribute this to?" He said, "It's sellers. Sellers can't, or I should say, new buyers can't sell their previous house. They have to sell in order to buy. And if they can't sell, if they get stuck for whatever reason, then you get these cancellations that happen, and it's more and more of that happening. So
That's probably location specific. Um, Here in Florida, you get people, the boomers, and they're buying in cash, so they're not backing down when they buy. People buy and they can't get a mortgage and they back down, or they're relying on selling a house for a down payment.
yeah, their equity is built up in their house. They need to sell that in order to rebuy. Yeah. So if we've had a housing boom, it seems for the last 4 or 5 years, right, since COVID, and if that starts to slow down, where's that going to lead us? It's
Um, yeah, it leads to the other big factor in what's employment doing? Are people losing their jobs?
yeah,
You know, everybody has been focusing now over the last 2 weeks on how many jobs AI is going to take out of the market. I keep reading that, and that has become the focus. You know, what kind of scares me is the driverless cars. To me, that is really huge. Even just take a guy who loses his job. You lose your job, and the government slow down or whatever. And you go drive for Uber. But what happens if Uber doesn't use drivers anymore? you know, and how far away is that? You know, um, and it has really big impacts on areas. Like take, I don't know that I would be a rush to buy the autos. If you got the boomers, just think about this for a second, and maybe it's more of a reach for the immediate trader. But you got the baby boomers who are have been the snake swallowing the basketball all my life. I've been looking at that, the size of the boomers and what happens. And the boomers are now reaching a point where a lot of them are not going to drive anymore, or people are going to take away their licenses. So are they going to buy a car, or are they going to go with a driverless auto? Are they going to buy a driverless auto? Maybe they will, or maybe they'll just rely on getting an Uber when they need one, and a car will show up. And what's insurance going to be like, and what's the world going to be like? I mean, who do you sue when you get into an accident? Are you going to get into an accident? I mean, stupid things like this run through my mind all the time, and you know, I don't know.
Well, that I started reading a sequel to a book I read several years ago, The Fourth Turning. Now,
But yeah,
the new book is The Fourth Turning is Here, and it was written probably a year ago or so. Um, and the whole concept of the book is there are 180 to 100-year cycles, and it's broken down into four seasons. And the first turning is that it's like spring. It's the excitement, everything turns around. Second turning is where you start to grow. Third turning is where you start to get a little turmoil. The fourth turning is where it's anarchy. It's that everything falls apart. And he's basically saying the fourth turning is here. We're going to live with this for another 5 or 6 years. And thinking about what's going on in some of these elections, New York City mayor, for example, one of the things that this guy wrote is that young people, mostly people sub 30 years old, will not make as much as their parents made when they were that age. And they think that democracy has failed them, government has failed them. So they would not be opposed to socialism. It's, let's try something new. And this is the conflict. This is everything's falling apart. And there's some people, young people I know, very frustrated. Can't afford new homes. They're struggling to buy a car. They living on rents that are just astronomical. Very frustrated about where they are and where their parents were at that point in their life, and they can't see the next step. Maybe it's because they're not as aggressive as their parents were. I don't know, but you could see something turning around. Like this whole idea of a socialist mayor in New York City, as crazy as
well,
one would have thought a couple of years ago.
and let's just address the philosophy here. First of all, I don't know where to begin with this. There was a Fed governor who was a bit of a crazy. His name was Wayne Angel years ago. I don't know if you remember him.
Yeah, I remember the name. Yeah.
And he said a lot of weird stuff. And he was a commodities guy. He was an interesting guy, but just shy of crazy, some of the things he said. But one of the things he said that got me thinking was they were talking about the cost of healthcare, medical services. And he said something really interesting to the point where I had to stop and say, did this guy really say that? And he said, now take healthcare. They say it costs more than it did 2 years, 10 years ago. And it does. But do you get the same health care? I mean, the healthcare you had 10 years ago is vastly different from the healthcare today. It's really much better,
Hmm.
And if you look at that in 30-year slices and 50-year slices, you really can't compare the two if you just look at it in that one dimension, cost. Because 30 years ago you went to the doctor and you spent X, and today you go to the doctor and you're spending 3X or
Right.
4X. But today the guy's saving your life. And stuff 30 years ago, he had no clue. But he's looking at now. He's looking at you now with machines. So the caliber of the service that you're receiving must be compared to the cost that you're comparing. And things are really different in some areas. When somebody makes a statement like you just made, I have to think about whether or not we're comparing apples to grapefruits or oranges or anything. So if you tend to look at these things in that one dimension, it does get scary. And the point you were just making about kids not earning what their parents, but they're getting for the same amount of dollars, I guess, very different. I mean, look at what you get out of your cell phone.
Yeah.
You couldn't have got a cell phone 40 years ago. If you had a cell phone, it was this monstrous thing that took phone calls and maybe kept your telephone book. But now, you spend $80 and your cell phone gives you a heart diagnosis.
Yeah. I mean, the cell phone does so much that we didn't have available. I was looking at, I have an old clock radio. Nobody uses a clock radio anymore, right? Because you have your phone on the side of your bed. You know what time it is
Right,
all the time. You
right.
know, it's obsolete.
Yeah. You had to rely on some hotel operator if you
That's,
traveled,
that's
getting a
right.
call, setting a wake up call at 7 o'clock in the morning that maybe you were
Right.
going to get, and maybe you didn't.
That's all gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think this guy's point is there's frustration in that younger generation. And in each part of your 80-year life, the elders now are people that grew up in the 40s and in the 50s and 60s, um, and they've lived through it, and they have a different perspective, and everybody's got to go through that trend. Yeah, everybody's got to go through that 20-year gap. So we're at the point now where we're breaking down. Society is breaking down for a 20-year period.
Yeah. Those books, um, people keep talking to me about the fourth turning and now the sequel to the fourth turning. And my problem is with that, and a lot of it is valid. Yeah. But my problem with it is it tends to look at things in terms of cycles. It tries to make everything a cycle. And we're beyond cycles here because the rate of change is really so different than what it was then. Change is change, but the delta is really very different.
Yeah, but in the first book that he talked about, the first book that I read about the fourth turn, he goes back to the Civil War, and he breaks those things the monstrous things that happened in the course of history over an 80 to 100-year period, and he says, and then 100 years later this happened, and then 100 years later this happened, and you look at it, and what was it like in the Civil War as opposed to the 1920s?
Well, see, that's the point.
Yeah, but
That's exactly the point. When you're taking 100 years, 100 years from 1450 to 1550 was very different than 100 years between 1850 and 1950 in terms of the changes in society.
But the 100 years between 1850 and 2050 is going to be vastly different again. But the point is that the cycle does repeat, or at least he's shown it for the last 300
Well,
years.
that's yeah. I don't know. I can't. To
You can't
me,
rep. Yeah,
I think it would be more accurate to say 100 year cycle in 1850 to 1950 in terms of speed of change in society is equivalent to a 10-year cycle today. And that's my problem with these books. If you just go back 10 years, 20 years, look at the changes, vastly different than any 20-year period back then. It's the rate of change it's that delta that for me throws those cycles out of you know they take a 50-year cycle as if every 50 years are the rate of change is the same, and it's not. The delta of changes.
Yeah, I see your point. I just think that, having read the first book, there are so many, the difference between 1750 and World War II, but the cycles do repeat, right? The cycles do repeat over and over again, or at least,
And you also get these catalysts, these synergies.
yeah.
I said to somebody the other day, I traded and lived through the Volcker years. And Volcker taught me what monetary policy is all about. And to some extent, this Trump administration, the last year, is teaching a lot of people what fiscal policy is all about. Certainly trade policy. He's taken trade policy and used it in a way that nobody's used it. So I think that kind of is a better gauge at a cycle. But anyway, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
No, it's interesting. I get your point, but yeah, I think you should read the book just to see what he's saying. And I think
So many people have recommended it to me, and I think I downloaded it once, but I never really got around to reading it.
So we have elections, and it's and and you really get to the point. Someone sent us both the picture of Zoran Mandami and said Florida's Realtor of the Year, and my comment back was, "That's funny because a couple of years ago Cuomo was Florida's Realtor of the Year." Right?
We'll talk about rate of change.
Here you are. He's back again, and he's the good guy.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
Trump endorsing Cuomo. That was a shock to me.
yeah, yeah. And what he said is a bad Democrat is better than a good
Communist.
communist.
Yeah, just totally dismissing the Republican and or the
Okay, so
conservative.
I don't know that he's going to be Florida's Realtor of the Year, but he could be New Jersey's Realtor of the Year. I see if this guy wins in New Jersey and they lean right, you could see a flight into New Jersey. That could be a serious play.
Hmm.
Sell New York and buy New Jersey, although New York comes back all the time, you know. And the other theory here, you have to break before you fix it. Mamdani could be breaking it before you fix it. I mean, I try to look at the practicalities of it. Try to figure out at my breakfast today how he could make the buses free. He doesn't control the MTA. So the city has to print these cards and give them to people that the MTA will pay. So the MTA will be recording the cost and charging the city. So the city will have to pay the MTA as a practical matter.
Hmm.
So a lot of what he wants to do, he is not going to be able to do on his own. And Trump has exactly the point. When he runs out of money and comes to me, don't sing your song because I'm warning you now.
Well, I saw a clip of Kevin O'Leary on, I guess it was Fox, one of the Fox shows, and they asked him about it. And he said, listen, every politician says money for nothing, chicks for free, right? He says, and then they get in office and they realize that where are we going, right? I can't afford this. And he says, and he's going to go to the state, and the state's going to say, I can't do this. The state legislature, he's going to blame the state legislature. Then he's going to go to private people, and he's going to say, well, I need $30 million to do this. And he's going to blame everybody. The fingers are going to go both ways. He did it. He did it. He's not going to be able to accomplish anywhere near what he wants. But he's going to get in power. And
Well, here's a scenario, and it's got a low probability right now, but Hochul loses the governor's race to Stefanich, and she becomes.
Is that 2 years from now, or it's not now? Not today.
No, it's 2 years from now.
Yeah.
But at that point, New York will be up to its ass in alligators,
Mhm.
right? So we get a new governor, and the new governor looks at New York and decides, You got to play ball with me or you got to go. And remember, there was talk about Cuomo had the right, uh, the legal ability to replace De Blasio. Remember that whole conversation?
Vaguely.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
De Blasio was Mamdani light, you
Oh
know.
yeah. Oh yeah.
And now, if Mamdani breaks it up the way he could, you're gonna have people living on buses now and on trains, and then you're not gonna be able to get them out. And the quality of life is going to deteriorate quite rapidly. Um, the safety issue, the police, I mean, they turned their back on De Blasio. Imagine what they're going to do to Mamdani, you know? So this is bleak. And to the extent that he can do what he wants to do, no, he can't. But is he going to damage enough to make the quality of life in New York bad, critical? I mean, I could see Capital Flight out of New York and into New Jersey for sure. Now, whether it's out of New York and into, and let me throw this at you. The New York Stock Exchange decides to move. What does that do to New York? And if I were the New York Stock Exchange, I would seriously, I'm sure there's meetings right now discussing this. What were we going to do under Mandami? So the New
Well,
York Stock Exchange could live in, I don't know, Fort Lauderdale,
Wichita Falls.
Miami, yeah, Wichita Falls, yeah, wherever, Texas.
I just thought of J.P. Morgan just unveiled their $3 billion new global headquarters, right, at 270 Park. They're probably not going to go anywhere. They just put a lot of effort and a lot of money in. But who's to say that Citibank won't or Bank of America won't?
Yeah, but what about the people in those buildings making $1 million a year? The people, uh, but that the businesses rely upon. That's the problem. That's the problem. You could see J.P. Morgan saying, "Yeah, we're going to stay in Park Avenue, but we can't find anybody to work here. We lost all our hedge fund traders. They all moved to Texas or North Carolina or someplace with more favorable tax positions." You could see not so much a capital flight, although that's clearly likely, but a a talent flight, and I think that's the more likely scenario because it's much easier for people to move than a business to move. But a business like the New York Stock Exchange, you know, uh, how many of the floor traders would bail out and move? These are people making serious money, and Mandami's looking at them with a target on their back.
It's a Mad Max scenario. It's people are going to flee, and you're going to have Mel Gibson running around on some three-wheel scooter somewhere on Fifth Avenue.
Or Isaac Hayes, the flight from New York. Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's certainly a scary time, and
I
I know
wonder
a
if
lot of
that. I wonder if that's what's behind some of the markets today, and
yeah,
that they're
and
addressing that reality.
the spin that the Cuomo team has had has been amazing. It's been wonderful. He's a great politician. For the last week, and I only started hearing this in the last week, that Curtis can't win. A vote for Sliwa is a vote for Mandami. You can't vote for him. No matter how much you think no matter how much you support his conservative principles, you can't win. So you have to close your eyes and vote for me.
Well, while I I say there's a lot of truth to that. It probably is true in terms of probability, maybe, but polls have been bought before,
Hmm.
and there's a lot of money that's floating around in this election. I don't know what the source money's doing, but there's plenty of it. So I don't believe the polls anymore. Do you?
No, not
Well,
since the
back to the
2016
credibility
election.
issue, which we've talked about. What can you believe now? We don't believe the labor statistics. We don't believe a lot of the information we get. We don't believe the polls. We don't believe the media. Well, that's the big question, I think. What happens to a society when its its functioning parts lose all credibility. And that's maybe the fourth turning.
And that's the
That's really where
crisis.
we
Yeah.
are.
That's the crisis. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't have faith in your institutions, it's a loss of faith. I've been used saying a loss of credibility, but it's really a loss of faith.
And that's what he's saying about young people and democracy. That young people have lost faith in democracy.
Yeah.
And he wrote this a year ago, a year and a half ago, something. So I think that's an interesting thought that young people have lost faith that because all they do is argue. They don't want to solve the problem. They just want to be right. Politicians these days.
You know my problem with that? The word democracy. I don't think it's democracy they lost faith in. I don't think they understand what democracy. We don't have a democracy. We live in a representative government anyway. Um, but I think they're saying they lost faith in capitalism.
Yeah.
Yeah. People say to me, "Are you a conservative?" I say, "I'm worse than a conservative. I'm a capitalist. I'm the ultimate demon." You know, um, I believe in capitalism, and I think people are motivated and should be motivated by their own self-interests, but not to the extent of only their self-interests. But if you want to motivate somebody, make it important to them, and they'll get motivated. You know, we're doing a lot of things wrong here. Our education system has collapsed years ago, years ago. And it's a simple solution. The solution is embark upon a policy that makes kids curious. Nobody can teach anybody anything. Anybody can help somebody to learn. And if you can make somebody curious, you can't stop them from learning. And our education system doesn't do that. And we have solutions like that. And I think capitalism is one of those solutions. Motivate people to make things better by promoting their own self-interests. I know I sound like Wall Street, Gordon Gekko, but
No,
I believe
it's a simple policy and it's worked for a long time.
yeah,
It's what
can't
this
deny the
country is made.
results.
Yeah.
But nobody's teaching these kids this.
No.
Nobody's. You can see the education. I remember I was
But the
working with a
question
kid.
is, and that's the point, who's teaching them? Who's teaching them? It's the people that grew up in the 60s, that came of age in the 60s, in the free love era. And those are the people that are teaching them now, right?
Yeah, well, the people that don't really understand capitalism. Yet every kid is a capitalist. Every kid, will say to you, "Oh, give me ring dings." Why? Because I could trade them in for great things in the lunchroom. Kids know how to work the system, how to work the capitalist system. We defeat that.
Yeah. We poison that mindset.
We're way off topic here. Where are we in the
That's true.
markets?
That's true. But it's looking ahead at where the markets are going if we do walk away from capitalism even in the
I
next
think
6 months.
short term, if you're a short term trader, you're looking for the shining object that the market's looking at. And right now, the focus seems to be on PE ratios. This market is looking at PEs and say, we got to have a century of really good news in order to keep these PEs viable. And we get some doubt is creeping into the market with respect to continually upgrading these earnings. And I think that's all that's happening right now. Is it an opportunity? Yeah, maybe not today, maybe another couple of weeks or a week or two. But I think the employment and not getting any data at all, not knowing where the employment picture looks, we could be seeing a lot of people out of jobs here. And maybe that's the bigger picture. Maybe people are looking at AI and saying, this means, where does this all end? How many jobs are we going to need with
Well,
AI?
you talk about we could come down a bit. Do you think we could see a 10% fall in the averages from here?
I think we could see a severe liquidation event of the leveraged positions. My question to you is how much of this market is in weak hands? That's why I bought Robinhood puts.
Yeah.
I bought Robinhood puts because I think your leveraged players are in Robinhood. They're the guys looking at their cell phones, and saying, "Oh, what can I do to buy 100 shares of this?" Lever up, and I think they're completely leveraged. They buy in, writing options to the extent they can. Uh, and some people are making money by writing puts, and you get a drop of 10%, all of a sudden they have to buy these positions. They got to finance these positions. So the leverage markets are the ones that are vulnerable. Now, if you could tell me which markets they are, then I could make myself about 20 million bucks. But
Well, I think it's certainly the computer stocks, the Nvidias of the world, Nvidias of the world. I
well,
think that
there's a lot of corporate buying in the Nvidia stocks. A lot of people are investing and throwing money into Nvidia and writing contracts with them. Nvidia's earning, you know, and their earnings keep going up. But $5 trillion, that's that's not insignificant,
yeah,
you
it's
know.
twice Canada. It's a Germany.
Yeah,
They're worth the German GDP. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I'm still like Argentina. This is not a recommendation, but I like Argentina, and I've been long a stock, a stable stock. If you want stability, there's a natural gas stock that pays like a really nice dividend. I think I showed it to you. It's a natural gas carrier, pays like a 12% dividend, and you can go hide there. They sold it because energy came down, but if energy comes down, it means there's a lot of it around. And if there's a lot of it around, it's got to be shipped someplace. So the shippers of NG, they look terrific to me. They're going to be really busy. They're
Well,
not
you've been
laying
on
off.
that for a while. You've been
Yeah.
on that idea for a while.
Well, I've been on the idea, and the problem with the idea was that those stocks were sensitive to energy prices. And the first piece of it, energy coming down, hurt those stocks. That's why they're cheap. Take a driller, you know. You always price the driller by, and it was sensitive to oil because the value of what they were pulling out of the ground made their good. But right now, we're in a position where they're not going to be laying off. The natural gas carriers, Trump is going all over the world saying, "Don't worry about it. We'll supply you with energy. You don't need Russian energy. India, you don't need Russian energy. We'll give you energy." How's that energy going to get to India? And as energy prices come down because of drill baby drill, it's still got to be hauled someplace and taken someplace, and your pipelines and your carriers, they all look pretty good. So and 12%, that's a nice yield to get paid for carrying that position around.
Yeah.
So I like that. I like Argentina still. I think Argentina. Why do I like Argentina? Argentina is Trump's horse in Latin America. He proved it when he got the phone call and Bissett got the phone call and said, "Do a currency swap for us, keep us out of the woods, get us past the election." And what happens in Argentina if he dumps the peso and goes to dollars? What happens there? I intuitively, I think that's a very good thing for them to do. There's a lot lost
It
in
takes the
that.
whole fear away of a peso devaluation.
All right, right, and I think that's on the table.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
Argentina is a nice place to go hide.
Melee has said he wants to get rid of the central bank. He wants to have people, if you want to have pesos, yeah, open a peso account. You want to have dollars, have a dollar account. Have multiple currency accounts for yourself. Yeah, you deserve the right to have that. So it's an
Yeah, well,
interesting
he
one.
said he wants to get rid of the central bank because it's corrupt.
Yeah, and it's not doing the job that it was supposed to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like I said earlier, Volcker taught me monetary policy. He was better than a graduate school course in monetary policy. He really showed
Hmm.
us what a central bank could do, and they've been abusing monetary policy ever since.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
So we're looking for a downturn. There's still some sectors that show some promise. The dollar, you think the dollar's got some legs here? If we go
Don't
into
know.
a recession, I mean, a lot
Don't
of
know.
people, I've been reading over the last couple of weeks that people have been getting very bullish on the dollar. And I don't know if it's too early. I don't know if the numbers coming out will be negative to it. I guess the positions are loaded, that there's been a lot of short positions in the dollar for a while. And maybe it's a sentiment trade. but I haven't been involved, and I don't think I will be involved. But there are a
Well,
lot.
there's a lot of, it's kind of like I said earlier. You really can't look at these things one dimensionally. Um, Tell me what's going to happen in Ukraine before you tell me what the dollar's going to do. Um, and that impacts the euro in one direction and maybe the Swiss franc in another direction. What's going on in England? Japan looks better, you know? So maybe you got dollar flow out of Japan. But then again, what happens to the carry trade if rates start moving? It's just too
Yeah,
complex for me right now. I
yeah,
can't,
there's a lot of levers that can be moved. Yeah.
yeah, I just can't oversimplify it. You know what I'm saying? So I'm very uncomfortable leaning one direction. I don't have a foreign exchange position. Um, I look for overbought, oversold conditions and maybe take a quick stab, but that's where
Mhm.
I am on that.
Yeah, I don't have a horse in that race at all. I'm on the sidelines in terms of the dollar.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we covered a fast amount. We'll see where we take it from here, but good luck with the election tonight.
It was an interesting conversation. That's about all I can say.
I think we could say that. All
All
right,
right.
Tim.
Take
Yep.
care.